What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by Major League Success. I have with me Shannon Leyh, and she is with Mainstream Realty Pros. Shannon, thanks for taking time out of your morning to jump on here with me to just share your journey about getting into the business and the success that you've had so far.
Well, thank you for having me.
And Shannon, we were talking a little bit before, jumping on here. And the goal of this podcast is to really, share the journey of every single real estate agent that's having success in our marketplace, and to show the audience that there's not one way to get into this business, and there's not one way to go out and build your business. So we always start from the beginning. What was life like for you growing up?
So I grew up in a small town called Belleville. It's about an hour north of Columbus, just south of Mansfield off 71, and very small town. I was actually just there yesterday for the Memorial Day parade, where half my family was in the parade. So including my son, he rode on a motorcycle with my dad in the parade. I definitely grew up in like a Hallmark movie. That's what my hometown looks like, right down to the town square and ice skating rink at Christmas, the whole 9
Wow.
yards. And I grew up knowing everybody, mainly because my family has lived there for generations. Funny story, I actually got pulled over speeding on the way to school when I was a senior. And before I got home from school, the cop had stopped and told my mom, because she worked at McDonald's and everybody knew her. And so I didn't even get a chance to like defend myself, nothing. Like I didn't even have a chance to lie about it. Nothing. Like it was kind of crazy. So the big thing for me, like I was in 4-H, I was in band, like I had a very idyllic childhood. I didn't realize how much so until I left that small town. For example, I didn't realize I am directionally challenged. My husband's like, how can you be in real estate and not be able to know like north, south, east, west? And I'm like, I don't know. It just doesn't compute. I need a landmark.
Yeah.
Um, it's when you grow up in a small town like that, though, things are also very traditional. You're expected just to get a regular 9 to 5 job with insurance and, do the whole thing. And, which is a wonderful thing. I just knew, by the time I hit high school, I knew I wasn't going to stay. I knew I needed to get out and go and do my own thing and, fly my wings, try them out at least. And so that was very hard for my family because I was one of actually, I'm still only one of like 2 that don't live in my hometown,
Oh,
and the
wow.
other was my brother. So, we both needed a little more, but, um
I'm curious about that because I grew up in a small town too. We moved around a lot, but
Mhm.
for the most bulk of my life, I grew up in a small town. And for me, once I came to Ohio State and graduated, like I knew I wasn't going back, right? I knew there was no
Mhm.
way, like no shape, no form. What was it, growing up for you that really wanted you to kind of get out of there, especially because your family is so rooted into the community?
Yeah. I think that's actually part of why, first of all, like, I was in 4-H as a kid.
Mhm.
Well, I did it all the way through high school. And one of the things I did was genealogy. One of my projects. I actually went to the state fair for it. And when I started digging, I was like, I can't date anybody in this school. There's a good chance we're related somehow. So I mean, that was part of it. But I think the other part of it was just, I mean, I could, not that I promote, my kids are going to watch this someday and be like, oh my gosh. But I'm like, I could not do anything and get away with it
Yeah.
because I had family everywhere. I mean, there were literally always eyes everywhere. And not that I wanted to, really get out there and party and do stuff like that. But it's just, I think it's a lot of pressure to always know that you've got to be on your best behavior because everybody knows what you're doing.
Mm,
And I mean, even when I go home now, it's still a lot like that, partially because of social media, but um everybody knows my parents. They know all my uncles. My family was on the fire department. It still is. I
yeah.
mean, it's just a very tight knit community, which is amazing in itself. I mean, I love going back. I would actually move back there, I think, if I could talk my husband into it. But at the time, being 19, like I was just ready to go and try something else. And I mean, I graduated with 144 people. I knew
Mhm.
every single one of them my entire life. And with that is awesomeness and also a very claustrophobic feeling. So,
Yeah.
it was, and most people I went to high school with went to the OSU Mansfield branch because you could go there and still live at home. And I was like, that's what my parents wanted me to do. And I'm like, I can't. I need, it was more, I think, looking back, I wanted to expand my circle. Like I wanted to meet more people, experience more things. It wasn't necessarily just that I didn't want everybody to know my business, because with
Yeah.
social media, and that don't matter where you live, you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
but so I think that's a big part of it. But I try really hard now, to integrate some of those things into my kids' life, because I don't want them to miss some of that. Like we live in Westerville, and I have my kids involved in 4-H. They're just getting to that age. And, I'm like, you need to know, like, some of these non-city things. It's important, and it helps grow you as a person and makes you very rounded.
Yeah, for sure. Shannon, what was the next steps for you then, after high school and, to take that next step of life of getting out and really expanding, like you said, your circle and just,
Mhm.
getting a new surrounding.
So I went to DeVry University, partially because, and again, this is another small town thing. I had literally never been to Columbus. I mean, I only grew up 45 minutes away, and the only time I'd been to Columbus was to drive through it to go on vacation. Um, we didn't have any ties down here.
Yeah.
So, um, my high school boyfriend at the time was going to DeVry, and that made my parents feel comfortable that they knew somebody that was there. And it was smaller. I mean, when you think about, I graduated 144 people, like I said, when you think about then stepping into Ohio State, I mean, that's a huge adjustment for
Right.
me as well. So I came down and went to DeVry, broke up with that boyfriend because it just wasn't the right fit, and went through three years, because DeVry's year round, of schooling. Got my bachelor's in business, and with a concentration in information systems. As you would imagine, it was technology based, which turns out I know that's not my gift. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, I just want a business degree that kind of covers everything. I was the first person to graduate from college in
Oh,
my
wow.
family. So it was, all of it was like a very brand new. So I just wanted to do something that I knew would be usable
Yeah.
in whatever my future held. So, and actually that turned out to be a huge key for me, attending DeVry. I made friendships there that I still have, even though everybody is, branched out and gone different ways in where they live and work. And we have our reunion weekends, that we love to do with all of our kids now, and things like that. So it was a great experience for me. Um, and actually, it's what led to my first job, because DeVry was known for their career, their placement in
Okay.
the late 90s and early 2000s. And yeah, so that's
What
where that
did you have? I know you mentioned, business as the major, and it was kind of like
Mhm,
a umbrella, right,
mhm,
degree, so to speak. But did you have any interest in business prior to that, or is it just one straight to where you just? I always find the reason why I ask is because I always find the whole college thing
mhm,
very interesting, especially based off of my path and all those things
Mhm.
of, why, and it's so hard at 18, 19 to pick, oh, what do I want my career to be? Or what do I want my, my degree to
Yeah.
be? But did you have any business interests before that at all?
No. No, it was I mean, before I was born, my dad had his own motorcycle shop,
Hmm.
um, which, as my mom will tell you, like, my dad's very into motorcycles, he actually professionally raced,
Oh, wow.
but yeah, half-mile dirt track,
Okay.
but he is not business-minded at all, like, motorcycles were the love, not the business, you know?
Yeah.
So r and he had, transitioned onto, another career path in my memory. I mean, motorcycles have always been a part of my life,
Sure.
don't get me wrong. I got a helmet for my first birthday, but, so, I mean, that's really the only, even entrepreneurial, um, thing I knew about, and I didn't personally experience it. The biggest thing for me, and I don't know, I'm sure this is kind of common, when you're the first one to go to college, that was what my parents wanted for me. Like, I just always knew I was going because that was and the same for my younger brother. Um, they were like, "You're going to college." And I think part of that's because my mom had wanted to go, but, it just wasn't feasible for her, when she was getting out of high school. And so it was I think it's different than it is today.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I know, like, for my kids, I've told them, and maybe this is me being in real estate, I'm like, "If you wanna be in a trade or a craftsman, please do. I will do whatever I can to support you in the
Yeah.
trades." And I don't really feel like I mean, I graduated in '99, and I don't feel like that was a conversation that many
Yeah.
people.
No, I agree, and that's why I always touch on this topic because, I mean, I graduated high school in 2007, graduated
Mhm,
Ohio State in 2011, and, I always tell people my parents didn't say, like, "Oh, you have to go to college," right? It
mhm.
was almost implied like that was the natural next step, right?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
military or college, like, take your
Mhm,
pick. So, my sister and I, we went to college. My brother went to, the military, and, in today's world, and I think, because you are a small business owner and I'm a small business owner, and I
mhm,
think entrepreneurship is becoming more okay and more popular, that
mhm.
college isn't, and the cost of school has gone
Yeah,
up, that college isn't the answer in order to go and get a great paying job, right?
right.
That is
Mhm.
quote unquote secure.
Right.
And it's just interesting. That's why I always touch on it because I'm always curious of what that dynamic was like,
Mhm.
from parents to child, and then, current thought process on it. Cause I'm like you, I'm like, you can go and do whatever you want. I don't have
Mhm.
kids, but if I did have kids, it'd be like, hey, go and do
Mhm.
whatever you want as long as you're happy, as long as you, work hard, the rest will take care of itself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, and, it's just a different when I got out in '99, Y2K was a huge thing, and so it was just just a different mindset,
Yeah.
of how things have changed, and it wasn't right, or I mean, it wasn't wrong.
Right.
It was just and I mean, really, it all came from a place of love, right? They just wanted more for us than they had,
Yep.
and as a
And I
parent, I'm like, I
and I
think
think
that's what we all want,
Yeah,
so.
and I think that's why we think the way we think, right? Because
Mhm,
we knew that, for us, right, college wasn't necessarily the thing that. Now my wife,
mhm,
like, she's very, her job's very specific for what her degree is. That makes sense. But
mhm.
for
Right.
us, it was, we accomplished more doing something outside of what we went to college for. So, and it's
Mhm,
ultimately we want what's best for the next generation, right, to go
mhm,
through. So, Shannon, touch base on what was that first job, out of college from
mhm,
DeVry. You mentioned that it actually led to your first career.
mhm. So, I while at DeVry, I was a student employee. Like, I had a I worked that was the nice thing about DeVry, I will say, everybody worked. Like, all of us had part-time jobs. I ended up becoming a residential advisor. So I lived in housing, and which DeVry's housing was in apartment complexes at the time. And, so I worked on campus and ended up getting a job in their co-op office. So they had an office that focused on getting internships
Mm.
for the students. And I was actually a student employee of that office, which was a very fun. I mean, I got to go with my boss and meet employers at companies. I learned how to sit and talk with them about what they're looking for, what do they want out of an internship, um, that sort of thing. And so I did that for, I think, the last year I was in college. And when I was approaching graduation, the career services department that DeVry had that helped grads find jobs actually had an opening because they had somebody going on maternity leave. And so, because I had already been in the cooperative education office, I already kind of had the background and some of the contacts that I needed just to flow right in and be able to be an easy fill in for one of the career advisors on going on maternity leave. So that's what I did. I actually started working full time immediately after graduation for the DeVry career advisor department. And so I did that while the one lady was on maternity leave. And then they asked me to stay full time after she came back. They had a
Yeah.
position open. And that was very interesting because it was actually with the business program. So I was helping my own peers find jobs. And I had to teach a class, a career. That was another caveat of DeVry. You had to take a career advising class, which basically was like putting resumes together,
Sure.
practicing interviewing. I mean, they definitely had a very good structure with that. But I mean, at the time, I'm not even 21, and I'm teaching my peers how to interview for a job. And keep in mind, I hadn't interviewed for a job ever. Because at this point, like when I worked at McDonald's in high school. Um, the owner knew me from
Yeah.
my mom. My mom worked at McDonald's for 25 years. She retired from there. So I mean, I didn't have to interview. He was like, "You turned 16, I'm ready to take you." And at DeVry, it was one of those things like it's not a huge school. So, people
Right.
got to know me and I got to know people. And so I had never interviewed for a job. And I'm trying to teach people some of that, well, quite a few of them that were actually older than me, um, you know, interview techniques and resume editing and things like that. Um, and also, it got me past being nervous speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
I mean, as you can imagine, public speaking is very nerve wracking for pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
So that forced me to get past that because it was a requirement of my position. Um, but that is crazily enough how I ended up in real estate because so one of the companies that came in to find a marketing students interview for a marketing position was Talent Title Agency.
Mm.
And they came to DeVry because the business manager and the one office manager, their sister was a dean at DeVry. So they came to us first. And so I, went through all the resumes, sent them the candidates that met their requirements. They did the interview process. And they actually ended up hiring one of my good friends because I mean, I'm working with my peers at this point in
Yeah.
time. And they took me out to lunch. My boss, me, the new candidate, like basically thank you for your hard work and all that good stuff. And I sent them a thank you email afterwards. It's just like, it was great to get to know you guys. You seem like a really great company. And in it, I already knew I wasn't going to be at DeVry long term. Like I already, the
Sure.
signs were there that I'm like, this is a great job. I'm learning a lot, but it's not for me for a long term. And I was just like, hey, if you're ever hiring, I'd love to talk to you. And they emailed me back with a job offer.
Did and no interest or anything prior to the real estate business before that? It was just more of you just kind of wanted a different scenery, change of pace.
Yeah. So what the position was at Talon, or what the department was, I should say, this would have been in 2004. Um, and they were doing postcards, flyers, design, target marketing, that sort of thing. And I was like, well, that seems fun. And hey, I already know who they hired in the marketing department, and we're good friends, and he's awesome. So, I'm like, this would totally, I mean, I'm at this point, I'm like 22. I'm like, this is going to be super fun. Like, let's do this. Yeah, I knew nothing about title insurance. I mean, my parents still live in the same home they bought when I was 1 year old. Like,
Wow.
I'd never been involved in a real estate transaction of any
Yeah.
kind. Um, and so, yeah, it was a total fluke that I got into the title insurance industry. And yeah, that's,
So how long were you at? So you're only at DeVry really for what, a year? Doing that job.
um, I think by the time, I transitioned to Talon, it had been almost 2 that I had been doing the full-time career
Yeah.
advisor, because
Yeah.
it's,
And you
yeah, I
mentioned, it's
graduated.
always interesting. The reason why I love, interviewing agents is because there's always usually something that happens, either earlier in their life or earlier in their career that
Mhm,
usually has a large impact, whether they realize it or not, into their real estate business. And you mentioned having to teach a class in public speaking, but also,
mhm,
job interviews is really being able to ask and articulate the right questions,
mhm.
and as real estate agents, that's part, we're kind of interviewing our clients and our clients are interviewing us,
Oh,
and some of that is
100%.
asking the hard questions, especially right now in today's market,
Mhm.
working with buyers and so forth, of really getting, into the weeds around some of those hard questions, motivations, and all of those things.
Yeah.
So Shannon, you make that transition into the title world,
Mhm.
with Talon. How long were you with them? And then lead me up to kind of that decision of, hey, I want to go get my real estate license.
So I was with Talon for 13 years. Um, I actually went back, um, and was watching some of your previous podcasts, and actually, I watched the one with Leah
Yeah,
Ackerman,
yeah.
because Leah and I worked together. I was her support person at Talon.
Well, then we probably knew each other because we used
Mhm,
when I got into the business with Ryan in 2011. That's
mhm,
how I met Leah. She was one of the first people I met, and Michelle.
mhm.
We were at consultants, so I'm sure we've probably communicated in the past.
Well, 100%, because, yeah, I was like and, Leah's huge on marketing. So I definitely was her behind the scenes, person. So yeah, I was at Talent for 13 years and learned a lot, and I did marketing the whole time I was there. And, it was a fantastic experience. Like, I think that's a lot of what's made me successful in real estate, is just the background of
Yeah.
being not in real estate, but part of an affiliate, because I was in the Pickerington office, and that office is in a strip mall, and it's like open air office, right? We have cubicles. So where I was, even though I was doing marketing, designing postcards, and had nothing to actually do with title, I could hear the escrow girls all the
Yeah.
time. And at one point, some of the title department was behind me that actually did the title searches, which I could tell you some really cool stories about when they're pulling old deeds and things down in like German Village and Clintonville. And, it was just, I heard a lot of their struggles, because I worked there through the crash. Um, and so, I mean, I could tell you, I could get into all kinds of stuff about that, but, it was just interesting because I could hear them making the phone calls, talking to the lenders through short sales. I could hear all of it. Now, that doesn't mean I understand all of it, but
Right.
I know enough to, especially in the real estate world, like, I can see a title problem, or at least anticipate. especially, when you get into something where it's in a state or somebody, they think they're going to pass away. I'm like, what kind of paperwork do we have in place? Do we have powers of attorney? Who has the rights to sign? Are
Yeah.
they, I know enough because I'm like, we will get in trouble. We will
Well,
get in trouble down the road.
yeah.
So,
It's
uh,
one of the things, that I always tell agents getting into the business, like, even if you have nothing going on, go and sit in your office.
mhm,
Just be in the environment, because you may not know it in the moment, but you're going to be picking up on everything else that's going around you, the
yeah,
conversations, the different scenarios, situations that come up. And even then, right, you weren't,
mhm,
pulling the title searches and doing all those things. You're still on the
right,
marketing side of things, but that probably has helped you so much when you made that
mhm,
transition over into the real estate agent side, just by being there. And you probably
yeah.
didn't realize it at the time, right? Because you probably weren't thinking real estate agent. But
No, I wasn't. And well, here's a crazy story. And this happened to me personally, because a lot of people are like, what is title insurance? And I'm like, honestly, it's boring. You don't need to know unless we have a problem.
yeah.
But like for myself personally, in 2012, my husband and I were selling our condo. Well, I had bought it when I was a single girl by myself. And I ran the preliminary title through Talon. And again, I'm going to preach this from the mountains. If you're an agent that doesn't start preliminary title, you need to start doing that. It will not jinx your deal, I promise. Uh, can't tell you how many times I've heard that. But um, on when I bought it, the deed wasn't done correctly.
Mm,
The seller's marital status wasn't included.
yeah.
I lived in this condo for 8 years, 7, 8 years. In the meantime, so, town's like, all right, we have to get the deed corrected, things like that. The seller had passed away. So now there's no seller to correct the deed. They tracked down his daughter, who when I bought it was under 18, now was over 18, living in Michigan, could not find a phone number for her. They ended up, and this is kind of the thing that people don't realize about title. They're like, oh, what does the title department do?
Yeah.
The title ladies got a hold of a neighbor. She was living in like a trailer park, got a hold of a neighbor because that's the phone number they could find. The neighbor knew her, flagged the daughter down when she got home from work that night and had her call.
Yeah.
And then the daughter had to sign the corrected deed, obviously with the appropriate paper
Yeah.
trail and things.
you, People don't, I don't think, really know what us real estate agents and the real estate people, to make the deal get to closing, what all
Mhm.
goes on behind the scenes. Like, that
Yep.
right there, is just a wild story of having to track down someone in order to make
Mhm.
sure that, it's marketable title when you go to sell next.
Right. Right. And it's, things like that happen. I don't want to say all the time, but they happen often enough that you really need to. That's why you run preliminary title. Because if we were already, because, well, we were on the market for a while, but they had already done that and started this. Because, that wasn't something that happened in 48 hours. It
Right.
took
Right.
them a week or so to be able to track down phone numbers, make phone calls, wait for people to call them back. And especially in the market we're in today, when you're going into contract in a weekend, you've
Yep.
got to give your title company a chance to fix those issues that may come up.
Yep.
Especially in like an estate situation where you've got potentially multiple siblings at estate. And then, oh my gosh, you throw dower rights in and you've got a whole nother train
Yeah.
wreck just waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's I think a little bit of why I'm so glad that I do have a little bit of a title background. One, I appreciate what they do because I know what they're doing behind the scenes. Um, and those folks never get to take off at the end of the month, just letting you know right now. Uh, uh, yeah. So I actually, funny story. So my husband went to DeVry and we crossed paths there. But he actually came in for an interview when we were hiring a third marketing person, and of course
Oh
we
my
went
gosh.
by. Yeah. And he they ended up hiring I was one of the interviewers, which that's a whole nother story. But we had given my boss did like the final round. We had narrowed it down. Um, but yeah, my husband worked there, and I forget where I was going with my story now. Oh, I know what it was. Well, my husband and he ended up getting laid off in the crash. And but that's when actually we told everybody we were dating. Um, but when we got married, it was May 30th. Today's my wedding anniversary, actually. And
Oh,
they were like,
congratulations.
thank you. They were like, why are you getting married at the end of the month? Like, you can't take off the end of the month. I'm like, oh, I'm marketing. I don't close anything at the end of the month. Like, actually, the beginning of the month's more busier for me. But yeah, they were like, why would you get married at the end of the month? You'll never be able to take an anniversary trip. But yeah, so
That is funny. That's,
mhm,
and small worlds, right? Crossing
mhm,
paths and you didn't really know it at the time. And then,
yeah,
coming in for an interview.
mhm,
Shannon, lead me up to the point of, making that decision that, I want to get out of the title space and, dive
mhm.
into, real estate from a real estate agent standpoint.
So in in 2014, I had my daughter, my second kiddo, and I went, Talon let me go part-time. We at that point, I was still in Pickerington, but we had moved to Westerville. So I did now about an hour commute by the time I hit the daycare and all that good stuff. And so they let me go part-time, which was amazing of them. It just did not, it was not working. I mean, I was still busy. I still ended up working on my days off. And, I'm like, then we also figured out that we didn't have busing for our son when we moved. I mean, he was only 2, wasn't even something we thought about.
Right.
And so he was getting to that point of preschool and things like that. And we are like, something's got to give. Like, I can't drive 45 minutes to an hour each way. Um, we're basically paying to have somebody else run our kids around.
Yeah.
But I loved what I did. I loved everybody that I worked with. I cried the day I put my notice in. But I was like, I love what I'm doing. A lot of what I did was met with brand new agents. Like, I don't know if we met, but I'm sure I had met with, I met with people at consultants all the time to put a marketing plan together. Now, whether they executed it or not was a whole another story. But,
Sure.
and I was like, I can do this. I've met with so many of these agents and put their marketing plan together. I can do it for myself. Um, when we bought our house, the agent I worked with tried to recruit me then, now granted he had known me for a long time, but um, so it was kind of it took me a while though to work up the courage because it's hard to go from having a solid W-2
Sure.
to being 100% commission.
Sure.
Now, my husband was super supportive. He had wanted me to make a change for a while. He was like, there's nowhere to grow. You can do it. So that was super helpful, but it's still nerve wracking. And the other caveat is I could not get my real estate license and keep working for title.
Mm.
Um, if you're a licensed agent, which a lot of title people are, you have to put it in escrow. The other thing is I knew too many people, and I knew the minute I went into a real estate class, word would get back to Joe Baroni,
Yeah.
and I mean, there would be, there's no like
Right.
getting ready for
Right.
my next step. Um, and it's funny because when I went to Hondros, the teacher was a broker and I had been in his office doing marketing presentations. So the minute I walked in, he was like, what are you doing here? So I had made the right choice. And I mean, I told him up front, what I was doing when I
Yeah.
put in my notice. But that was the biggest thing actually was my family. What were we going to do for our future? What could we do to be flexible with the kids and things like that? And
Yeah.
honestly, if I didn't have kids, I don't know that I would have ever had I don't know that I ever would have made the leap. I don't know if I would have been that
Mm,
brave.
mm. You mentioned that, leaving a W-2 and then going straight, commission based, right? And
Mhm,
I always talk to agents, because everyone we've mostly bring on new agents or newer agents to our team.
mhm,
And, people are always concerned about that, right? Like, well, I have another career, whether it's a salary or W-2, pay every 2 weeks. And I'm like, look,
mhm.
you know, it's like this false narrative of that job being secure because at any
Mhm,
moment you could be laid off, right?
mhm.
And it's out of
Yep.
your control. And you have someone else telling you what you're worth, not you telling yourself what you're worth. And I always tell people getting into this business, it's it's simple but hard.
Mhm.
It's simple in the concept of how to go get business. It's hard in the execution because of the consistency and needing to know business and marketing and all of those things. But I always tell people at the end of the day, if you truly believe in yourself and in your work ethic,
Mhm.
then the sky's the limit, right? And what
Yep.
you put into it is what you're going to get out of it, and it can be one of the most rewarding careers. But you
Mhm.
truly have to have a uh, self-awareness conversation of do I truly have that work ethic in order to go out and to succeed? Because I think that's the separator,
Mhm.
in our industry.
Well, and one of the things I did before I made the leap, because I knew so many real estate agents, I knew one of the things I wanted to do was join a team.
Mm,
Because I think one of the biggest downfalls in our industry is that we don't require a mentorship program of
yeah,
some sort.
I agree.
Um, I mean, when you sit through those real estate classes, they all you're learning is how not to get yourself in trouble, which is very important. But I'm like, the fact that you can go through classes, get your license, and you've never looked at a contract
Yeah,
is a real problem.
yeah,
And so, I had met with so many brand new agents over the years that I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're going out on their own." And it was a scary thought to me. And so I don't know if I would say interviewed, but I reached out to a couple team I didn't even reach out to a couple. I reached out to one team leader that I liked how he did his marketing because every team does their marketing different.
yep,
And I liked his style. I liked how he treated his agents, how he let them market themselves using the team name and still, because I mean, I had done marketing for team members that even though it was their listing, it had the leader's name on it and their name was like yay big.
right.
And, so I also knew, when I reached out, his name's Joel. When I reached out to Joel, I knew he would give me the good, bad, and the ugly about real estate. So we met up for coffee and really one of the things he said that stuck with me was if you're going to do this, you need to commit to it for 3 years. He's
Mm,
like, this is not something that you do it for 6 months and if it's not working out that you get out. He's like, you need to, have money set aside and be prepared. And he goes, you need to commit for 3 years. Like in your mind, just know that this
yeah,
is what you're going to do for the next 3 years. He's like, because that really is how long in my experience, it's taken to establish yourself, start those clients you worked with the first year, may start coming back, and really
yeah,
get that flow going to where you're not always trying to cast a net and find fresh fish.
yeah,
So, and he was right. I mean, I joined his team and that was one of the best things I did actually was joining a team. I can't tell new agents enough, join a team because I love the brokers. I do, and they're super important. They don't have time to hold your hand for a year.
yeah.
They just don't. Now,
Well,
if you are going to a brokerage that has a specific person for that, that's a different story. But you need somebody right there that when you are in a showing, okay, or for me, one of my first showings, I didn't know how to operate the lockbox. It was one of them that was the turn
yeah,
knob.
yeah, yeah.
I was like, "How many times do I turn this? I've never used a lock like this." I'm like, "I don't know how many times to the left and how many times to the right." I'm like, just simple stuff like that, that being on a team, I actually, in that case, got a hold of a team member and I was like, Karen, I don't know how to work this lockbox. I don't know how to do this. And she was
Yeah.
dying laughing. She's like, how do you not know how to work one of these master locks? And I'm like, I've never had to do that. I don't know. I didn't even lock my locker in high school. I don't know how to work this thing. And, but it's joining a team, at least to get started those first few years and establish a foundation. I'm like, the knowledge that your team leader and team members have, you can't pay enough money for that, in my opinion.
No, I'm all obviously biased. Started out on the team. I'm still on the same team, right? And
No.
it's, to me, I think you're exactly right. It's not necessarily, why were teams created? Because brokers and brokerages were missing different value propositions that agents truly needed because of the model. And that's, everyone that hears me will always hear me say the industry's broken is because the models are broken. Right. And I'm with you. I think every new agent, that should be a requirement, not just mentorship, but go and join a team, because I think that's different than some of the mentorship that some of the big brokerages, my brokerage included, rolls out. I don't think that is true mentorship either. So,
Right.
I always say join a team for the first 6 months, 12 months of your career, because it's
Mhm.
all of the other stuff. It's the questions about how to get into a house when you're, in a
Mhm.
pinch. It's, learning how to write a clause, or working on a different negotiation strategy, or,
Mhm.
all of the other stuff that would take you forever if you were
Mhm.
just on your own. Or you may feel lost. You know, a team should not, if you're on a team, you shouldn't feel as lost. You probably will still feel lost, like, being brand
Mhm.
new, but you shouldn't feel as lost.
Yeah, I mean, like so Joel was a home builder in the early 2000s. And so I mean, the construction knowledge I learned
Mhm.
was amazing, just because he had been boots on the ground in it,
Yeah.
and my first couple listing appointments, he was right there with me. He had me shadow his showings. Now, do I do exactly what he does? No, because everybody has to find their own style.
Right.
But I mean, I couldn't have done it without him. I
Yeah.
really couldn't have. And I'm no longer on his team. But we still have a great relationship. We're not even at the same brokerage anymore. And I cover for him when he's out of town. He covers for me. I mean, we just, we knew that the where we were in life, like we both need different things from our brokerages, and
Yeah.
every brokerage offers different things, and
Yeah.
so you have to go where it fits best for you. But absolutely, like, trust
What
each other with your clients, no doubt.
what year did you get licensed?
So I got licensed in 2015.
Okay. Okay. 2015. Dive
Mhm.
into like those first couple years. Your team leading your mentor said, "Hey, 3-year commitment, right? You got to be in it for at least 3 years."
Mhm.
Dive into those. Did you have instant success? Did you have struggles? Like, how did you think? How did you work on building your business at that time? Because,
Mhm.
I got in 2011. Really, 2012 was like my first full year in the
Yep.
business. We were still coming out of, 08, 09, still dealing with some of
Mhm.
that. 2015, I found like that's really when a lot of the foreclosure started to really slow down. The short sales started to
Mhm.
disappear. Obviously, the market started to pick up and, just keep building up to what it is today. But what were
Mhm.
your first couple years like, and how did you focus on growing your business?
So this is where I'm really lucky, because with my background in marketing, I already had a leg up that a lot of people don't. So what I did is I so 2015 was the 25th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers. So I and my previous initials were SMB for Super Mario Brothers, which I always thought was funny.
That's funny.
And so I made a postcard that emulated the world at the end of the castle, where, at the end of
Yeah,
each
yeah.
level, you try to save the princess, but she's moved on and you move to another world. And so that's what I did. I actually paid for the Super Mario Brothers font, and created my own postcard that said, I've moved on to another world. And I mailed that card to everybody I knew.
Oh my gosh.
Like my whole Christmas card list, because I'm still old school and send Christmas cards. And, the reaction I got from that, first of all, because like for my generation, everybody knew immediately what that was.
Right.
But it really made that first impression that I was now in real estate as a realtor. And I continued to do, social media wasn't as big as in 2015. Facebook was around and stuff, but not to the extent it is today.
Yeah.
And no Insta. Sorry, folks. But I really started with that old school, the paper. And I started in September. So I mailed that out. Excuse me. I mailed that out in September, and then, followed it up with another marketing piece around the holidays, and really just keeping my name out there. My first lead, well, actually my first listing, I owe to one of my colleagues that was at Talon. She referred me a friend of hers that it was going back to the bank. She was trying to sell it before they foreclosed. And I wish I knew then what I know now. I would have bought the darn thing myself. But it ended up not closing. It went back to the bank. I couldn't get it in contract because what she owed, we couldn't. I mean, we got off, but she couldn't go that low. But what happened is I got a call on the internet from somebody who wanted to see it. And I showed it to them, and it wasn't the place for them, but they really liked me. The couple liked me, and I ended up selling them their house. And then they referred me to a coworker, and that was my second buyer.
Yeah.
And I mean, but it took about 6 months for my first closing. Matter of fact, it closed December 29th, and I got paid just in time to pay the real estate dues. And that's exactly about how much money I made. I was like, woo.
Yeah. I can go another year, right?
Yep. Like, all right, I made it. Like, I'm going to break even for this year. Not even break even, because by the time you pay taxes, it didn't.
Right.
But it was, and that was my first taste of success, was that I had that buyer. And I mean, that sales price was, I think, $103,000, but I was like, all right, I can do this. It kind of gave me, I mean, I sold a house to somebody I didn't know.
Right.
That was my first, they just met me, liked me. And I was honest with them. I told them, I'm like, I'm new. And they're like, we don't care. We've never bought a house either. I'm like, okay, great. and at closing, they gave me a gift. I mean, I had a gift for them, but I mean, they gave me this beautiful scarf. I still have it. Bottle of wine. It's long gone. And then when and kind of like with what Joel had told me, 4 or 5 years later, I had stayed in contact with them. We're connected on social media now. And when they were ready to sell, they called me.
Yeah.
So, I think that was the first, 6 months. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. But I mean, it wasn't like you see online. Like, I wasn't making $100K
right
the first year. I think I closed enough deals. I was around like 15 to 20, but it was enough, right? Like, it's real estate isn't a get rich quick type thing that a lot of people think it is. And that's when I've met with other people thinking about getting into it. I'm like, there's a lot to think about, because you need to be able, I mean, I was blessed. I had my husband, I wasn't just doing it on my own. I had his health insurance. And we had saved, we had taken Joel's advice and definitely set money back and things like that. But I would say probably about that year 3 is when I really hit my stride. 2017, 2018 were fantastic years for me. And Joel was right. 3 years was about when it really started becoming, I don't know if I want to use the word easy, but it definitely started flowing.
Yeah, the momentum was built, right? And
Yes.
now it's, maintaining it or growing it. And that's why I talk to a lot of agents, it's the a lot it's like a rocket ship. A lot of the effort in the beginning is going to be a lot greater when you
Mhm.
get into the business. But then it's all
Yeah.
about, once it's going, maintaining it and keeping it going,
Mhm.
and not stopping and starting and stopping and starting, because the effort to start it every single time is so great that that's where a lot of people get frustrated. Whereas if you just do a lot of that hard work up front and build that momentum, and then it becomes, like you said, not easier, but it comes easier to
Mhm.
continue to build your business from there.
Yep.
I want, because I know we're limited on time, and I want to be respectful of your time this morning. I want to kind of move more towards, your 3-year mark. You're really growing
Mhm.
the business, and I want to kind of now shift to like future pace of where
Mhm.
you want your business to be. What's something that you're really looking to accomplish here in the next 12 months?
Well, something I'm really proud of, just to step back a little bit, is in 2020, 2021, my husband and I bought our first rental, and we also have a short term rental that we bought in West Virginia. And so that is really where I want to build. I don't have a desire to have a team. That's just not my calling. And I'm at a good place where I can manage. I do have a transaction coordinator I use through my broker and things like that. So I'm at a place where if I can maintain what I do real estate wise, that's great. But what I really want to do is build the passive income.
Mhm.
My goal is that my husband can quit his job at any time. I mean, he loves what he does. There's nothing with that. It's not like there's any burning
Right.
desire to do that at the moment. But I would like to build enough passive income that when that day comes, he can do that and just be my maintenance man. Or that we can travel and do things of that nature. So really, from a real estate standpoint, I'd like to hold steady with where I am now, but really build that portfolio of long-term rentals and maybe more short-term rentals. We'll kind of see how that road goes, but definitely the passive income is where we're focused on moving forward.
What's something that you're looking to accomplish in the next 5 years?
So right now I only have one long-term rental and one short-term rental, and I really would love to get up to 5 to 10 doors in the next 5 years. Ideally, 5 doors by 2025
Yeah.
is like my. I mean, it's hard to believe that's only 2 years away,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's where my focus really is in the short term.
Love it. Shannon, what's a legacy goal for you?
Um, Legacy goal, I guess, would be generational wealth. I don't know that real estate is going to be where my kids go. They're still young. I mean, they're still in elementary school, but my daughter's probably shown more houses than a lot of agents because she was a year old when I got licensed, and I took that baby everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and my son usually does my video, like if I'm doing virtual tours, he's running the iPad so I can open doors and talk and do the thing. Um, but if that's not their calling, that's okay. But I would like to set it up to where there's generational wealth, and kind of going backwards a little bit too, because my parents and my in-laws do not live here. My in-laws are in Menor, Ohio.
Yeah.
My parents still live where I'm from, and so that's another caveat is I would like to have some rentals that if I ever need them for them, that
Mhm.
they can move closer to me and not have to worry about trying to buy a place, because that is a lot of who I'm working with right now are widows that are moving down here to Columbus to be closer to their kids, and it is a tough transition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that my wife and I are currently working through and talking about with her parents,
Mhm.
being able to move them closer if, in a couple years, if need be, and
Mhm.
figuring out, what does that look like. And because they're also from a smaller town, and, it's just different,
Mhm.
right? It's expensive to be
The
in
budget's a lot
Columbus.
different, yeah.
It's expensive to be down here. Um,
Mhm.
Shannon, last question for you. what's one piece of advice that either you wish you had in the beginning of your career, or one that you share with a lot of real estate agents, starting out, or just in general? What is one piece of advice that an agent needs to hear?
There's a lot of things that they probably should hear. But I think one of the big things is what I was told. You've got to give it time. When you come into this, you need to have a nest egg saved up because it's going to take time to get momentum. You need to plan on making it a commitment. It needs to be something that you plan to do for at a minimum 2 years. But I mean, really, that 3 years is a great target. But it also has to be, I think the biggest thing is you have to be willing to put the work in. And it's a lot of work because everybody we know knows multiple realtors. And you have to have a thick skin because sometimes they're not going to pick you and it's going to hurt a little bit. But people, what I always tell folks when I'm meeting with them is you need to pick an agent that like, and trust. I don't care if they've closed 100 deals, if they've closed 2 deals. We're going to spend a lot of time together. I'm going to be asking you a lot of personal questions. And if you don't feel comfortable with me, then I'm not the right fit. I'm
Yeah.
not the right choice for you. And I always tell them on the flip side too. And I'm like, and if you go cray on me, I can fire you too, and I mean, that usually makes them laugh, but I'm like, it's
Yeah.
true because sometimes, I mean, we've all gotten knee deep in a transaction and we're like, ooh,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
I was the right fit here. And, I mean, I've had transactions where, well, I shouldn't say transactions, but I mean, I've been fired.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that word, lightly because when the client called me and he's like, I don't think this is working out. And I'm like, you know what? It's not. You're absolutely right. I feel the same. And I mean, I've offered to refer them. I'm like, I'm happy to refer you to maybe somebody else that I think would be a better fit for you. And, or if you already have somebody in mind, that's fine too. And you have to not let that also affect you. You just
Yeah.
have to be like, you know what? I'm not everybody's cup of tea and they're not mine.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the biggest thing is those few things right there.
No, I 100% agree with that. And I think we're moving into a time where, agents have to get real good at interviewing the clients to see if they actually can do something in this market,
Mhm.
especially on the buy side, and not just going out and chasing bad business to be busy.
Mhm.
But really making sure that the clients can perform, that personalities align, that expectations
Mhm.
are on point for both sides, right?
Right.
Expectations from agent to client and client to agent,
Mhm.
and to the marketplace. So, Shannon, I 100% agree with what you just said. I'm right there with you. Shannon, for those that are listening in and that wanted to connect, everyone that's been watching,
Mhm.
her phone number's been at the bottom. If you are someone that's looking to buy, sell, invest, or if you're a real estate agent that you just want to ask a question or whatnot, make sure you
Mhm.
guys reach out to her. But Shannon, for those that are listening in, what is the best way for someone to connect with you?
I'd say text. Really, as an agent, we're on our phones all the time. Text or email. My email is shannon@shannonleyh.com. But yeah, text or email, feel free to reach out. Marketing questions. I mean, I'm happy to talk through some of that. Target marketing. I still do a lot of that myself. So yeah, anything.
Shannon, thanks so much for your time today. And if I can do anything for you, please let me know. I'm here to help you any way that I can.
When we're in multiple offers, pick me. Pick me.
Shannon, thanks so much. I'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, John.
All right, bye.
Bye.